Thank you for the nice introduction. Before I get started with my presentation, I would like you to put yourself in a certain situation. One standard situation everybody can picture themselves in is being stuck in traffic during rush hour. So imagine you're on your way to work and a vehicle next to you starts indicating, signaling that he wants to merge in front of you. And actually you want to allow him to merge in front of you, so you start decelerating slightly in order to show that to him. But if the vehicle, however, doesn't respond to that and doesn't move towards the lane marking, in Germany you'd very easily put that off as accidental indicating and you keep on driving. And now imagine the other perspective. Now you are sitting in an automated vehicle as a customer and you are exactly in the same situation. When your vehicle starts indicating and nothing happens, after a short while you might get angry as a customer because you have spent so much money on such an expensive function and now it doesn't do what it's supposed to do. Now what do you think is the conclusion? The point is that people do not only comply to traffic road regulations, but they use implicit forms of communications in order to communicate with each other. And if an automated vehicle doesn't understand this and doesn't know how to use these rules, it won't be accepted and understood by the surrounding traffic. And today I would like to present to you my topic, what makes an automated vehicle a good driver, exploring lane change announcements in dense traffic situations. Recent studies have shown that people prefer an unambiguous and cooperative driving style when it comes to communication in a mixed traffic scenario. So the focus of this presentation is to learn more about human driving behavior and human communication behavior. And just to give you a better understanding of my topic, I would like to show you an illustration. So imagine yourself being in the same situation. You are in a stop-and-go traffic situation and you are the leg driver. In this case, it's the blue vehicle. And you perceive different lane change announcements. And they can be perceived in different ways, and that's what I want to show to you, actually. Okay. We start here. So that's a passive driving behavior. The vehicle on the right-hand side is indicating, but he's way too passive, so the blue vehicle isn't sure what the other vehicle wants. And then I would like to show you an example for a cooperative driving behavior. So you see there's like a real interaction going on. They're both really attentive. And now finally I would like to show you an aggressive driving behavior. So you can see the vehicle is indicating, but he's not waiting for a response. He immediately merges onto the other lane. And that's why actually the perception of different driving styles is so important, because it can be perceived in different ways. But what do I mean by different forms of communication? Actually, communication can be divided into 4 categories. We have the road traffic regulations we all know so far. And then we have explicit forms of communication. And just to give you an example, this can be, for example, the turn signal, the braking lights, the horn. And actually, for example, when in Germany, the horn is used as an instrument to communicate, but actually it's perceived in a kind of negative way. It's more associated with aggression and impatience. And last year I was also in Sri Lanka on vacation, and I've noticed that the people were like honking the horn all the time. And it appeared to me that it's really a sign of communication, but not perceived in such a negative way. And a tuk-tuk driver confirmed that to me by telling me that he would suffer more from a broken horn than from a broken braking light, actually. But you can also communicate through implicit forms of communication. And when you have a look at the pictures, here are different examples. For example, you can communicate through your body movements, through eye contact, through gestures and mimics. For example, if you are a pedestrian and you are standing at a crosswalk and you're not sure whether or not you can cross the road when a car is approaching, normally you make eye contact with the driver, and if the driver is like smiling at you or nodding or like decelerating, you know that you can cross the road. But if he's accelerating, of course, it's better to stay at your place. But you can also communicate through driving behavior. And that was the example I was giving at the beginning. You can underline your intention, for example, to merge onto another lane by indicating, but also by moving slightly towards the lane marking. But besides communication, attribution and evolving emotions also play a really important role. Imagine you're on a highway and someone tailgates you or cuts you off while merging in front of you. Actually, I personally will be really offended by that and feel kind of aggressive, and maybe I will think, maybe I should behave in the same way. But that's actually what we call the actor-observer effect in social psychology, that we take everything personally, although this has happened maybe by coincidence. But actually that's why cooperative behavior is so important, to avoid negative emotions and thus causing negative driving behavior or aggressive driving behavior. I conducted a static driving simulator study in Germany with a sample of 60 participants. I recruited them from the internal BMW pool, and they were normally distributed concerning age, gender, and driving experience. And I wanted to find out how the lag driver perceived different lane change announcements concerning perceived cooperation, perceived unambiguity, and perceived criticality. So let's have a close look at the experimental setup. So when you have a close look on the right-hand side, the participant is marked with the letter P, the lead vehicle is marked with the letter L, and the merging vehicle marked with the letter M. Based on studies and also on literature, I found out that there are two important variables when it comes to lane change announcements. We have the offset, and by offset I mean it's the distance from the vehicle center line to the lane center line, with 0 indicating that the vehicle placed within the lane, and positive values indicating that the vehicle moves towards the lane marking. And just to give you an example, here I differ between 3 levels, and 0.75 meters means, for example, that the vehicle already touches the lane. But there's another important independent variable. We have the duration of lateral movement. And by this independent variable, I mean from the beginning to the end of the driver steering towards the lane marking. And also here I differ between 3 levels. I also had a close look at differential speed, but that's actually a side issue and isn't the focus of today's presentation. When you have a closer look on the left-hand side, you see the whole traffic scenario. It depicts a 3-lane highway with stop-and-go traffic. So on the middle lane, the cars were driving 30 kilometers per hour. These are around like 19 miles per hour. And on the right-hand side, the vehicles were driving 10 kilometers per hour, so around 6 miles per hour. And the participant, in this case it's the BMW, was following a lead vehicle in a certain distance. And the participant had to decide whether or not to let a vehicle from the right-hand side merge in front of him, but also how he perceived the merging vehicle. And just to give you a better understanding of the whole scenario, I want to show you an illustration. So here the BMW is driving. He perceives a lane change announcement, and then he had to decide whether or not to let the vehicle merge in front of him, but also has to explain how he perceived the way the vehicle was merging in front of him. So in total, he had to evaluate 11 situations, 9 situations based on the 2 independent variables, and 2 control situations where the car was just like indicating and nothing happened. So after each situation, the participant had to evaluate the situation or the other driver by 3 different scales concerning perceived cooperation, perceived unambiguity, and perceived criticality. And just to give you an example, he could choose between one of the main categories, for example, cooperative, but if he wanted to, he could refine his statement by using one of the subcategories, for example, cooperative 12. So what are the results? I conducted a 3x3x2 mixed ANOVA to have a closer look at the within factors, offset and duration of lateral movement. And now let's go to the results. When we have a closer look at perceived cooperation, we can see that the participants rated the offset depending on how fast the offset was executed. So what we can see here is that like a small offset is perceived as being like very little cooperative. And the most cooperative situation was a medium offset. And for me, actually, the most interesting result is an offset of 0.75 meters, because when the offset was executed really fast, the participants viewed the situation as being like very little cooperative, and they were saying, okay, that's a really aggressive driver, he's really reckless. And maybe you can explain this by the theory of reactance, because maybe the driver felt somehow to be forced into a decision, and that's why he rated the other driver to be less cooperative. But when this offset was conducted really slow, then the participants viewed the driver as being also intermediate cooperative, and they were saying, okay, he's really determined, he knows what he wants. Let's have a closer look at perceived unambiguity. Here we can say that the stronger the offset and the faster it was executed, the more unambiguous the intention of the other driver was perceived. And concerning criticality, we can say that actually every situation was perceived as being more or less harmless, that there's one exception, again at the offset of 0.75 meters, because here we can see that the faster the offset was executed, the more critical or the more unpleasant the situation was perceived. So what have we learned so far? One of the main results is that a medium offset was perceived as being most cooperative. And actually, I recently conducted a study where I compared a new algorithm based on these findings with a conventional one based on human driving behavior. And my algorithm received better scores. So we can say that when it comes to mixed traffic scenarios, it is important to include the subjective perception in order to be understood by the human drivers. But of course, we have to look at more independent variables, and we also have to conduct studies outside from Germany, maybe in other countries, because every country uses its own rules, actually. And we have to conduct studies in a real traffic scenario to raise the external validity. But I think what we can say is that we have a first approach of how to model human-machine driving behavior. Thank you for listening.
Yeah, that was a really nice talk, Nina. Thank you. I've got a question about the implications of this work. So let me get this correct. The autonomous vehicle is the one that the participants are in, or they're supposed to imagine?
No, it's like the human driving behavior.
So it's the one that's changing lane?
Yeah, exactly, because I wanted to learn from human drivers.
Right. Okay, I see. Okay, well then I've got a slightly different question then. Did your participants actually look at the whole scenario from a third-person bird's-eye point of view, or from a first-person view?
Oh, I'm sorry, maybe I didn't mention it.
No, that's all right. I just want to clarify this.
They were sitting in a static driving simulator and they were driving themselves.
Okay,
and then they perceived this lane change announcement.
I see. So and then they had the freedom as well to turn their heads and to analyze.
Yeah,
exactly.
I see. Okay.
Oh, that's great. Oh, well, thanks for answering my question.
You're welcome.
Hello, Nina. Great talk. Alexander Mesciaco from the University of Salzburg. So participants were informed that the other vehicle was a real driver, or an autonomous vehicle?
No, I wanted to make recommendations from human driving behavior, and that's why they think that the other vehicle is a human driver.
Okay. Do you think that people's perception would be different if they knew that the other vehicle was an autonomous vehicle and not a human driver?
Actually, no, because I've conducted 2 recent studies where I compared the driving behavior of an autonomous vehicle with human drivers, and actually they really wanted the same. They wanted the autonomous vehicle to behave really unambiguously and to behave in a cooperative way, and not to behave defensive or anything else.
So you think results could be translated then to autonomous? Yeah,
I think so.
Okay, thank you.
Welcome.
Hi, I'm Alex Cass from Accenture, and thank you very much. Very interesting topic and talk. Oh, sorry. Yes. Yes, sorry, I'm Alex Cass from Accenture. Very much enjoyed this topic and your talk, very interesting. Sort of a follow-up to the last question. If autonomous vehicles behave, because they're all programmed the same way, in a consistent manner, perhaps do you think that might provide the unambiguity, might prevent the ambiguity, and the expected behaviors might shift to just what you know autonomous vehicles will do? That's part one of the question. Part two, if an autonomous vehicle is able to signal perhaps in a more fine-grained way about its intentions, do you think that might help as well?
Can you please repeat the first question?
Oh, I'm sorry.
I'm sorry.
I guess what I'm trying to get at the question of how autonomous vehicles might differ from human vehicles and the expectations of them might differ. And I realize at first we're used to humans, but once autonomous vehicles become common, if it might be different.
I think maybe it, sorry. Maybe it might be different, but actually, first of all, I don't want it to be different actually, because we as a company at BMW, we have to adapt, or let's say all OEMs have to adapt to human driving behavior, because I think that the highest priority is safety, and that's why the human drivers should understand us. And maybe in the future, when we just have autonomous vehicle, then they will differ in driving styles. But now it's really another, the focus is another. You have to put another focus, actually.
Thank you.
Welcome.
Could we, can we have the student volunteer to help with the connection issues?